Welcome to Unit 3. This unit demonstrates what people do to show kindness to others, and how we can all make a difference to someone by helping, even if we don't know them. Listen to some people talking about showing kindness to strangers, and the difference people can make.
I think it's not knowing what's going to happen. You don't know that person, you don't know what their reaction might be, you don't know if something that you do might offend them or upset them, or if they want to be left alone.
They don't always help because of safety, for safety reasons maybe. I just approached a young woman over here because her skirt had ridden up, so I was a stranger, went up to her, I said, "Excuse me love, you need to..." So she didn't know who I was. I came from behind because I was trying to, and it's not easy, and it depends on the context, it depends on the situation when you extend that kindness, but it seems to be harder as we become isolated in communities for basic neighbourly kindness to take place, we've found. Yeah.
You know what, I think that's quite a cultural question, because some cultures are very welcoming to people they don't know, others not so much. I'd say in London, yeah, it's pretty good. You can ask someone for like directions. It's a big city and there's so many different people here that you can't imagine everyone knows everything about the city. So yeah, here I guess you can be quite friendly to people you don't know, as long as I guess you feel comfortable.
I think it's very easy. It can be as simple as like making eye contact with somebody and just giving them a smile or like a little wave or something like that. Just passing on some kindness.
Everybody's a stranger in some place in the world when they're visiting, so it's very important.
I think it's very easy to be kind to strangers, but I don't think we do it often enough. I think it's a lot easier just to be nice to people, and then you get that back as well. And just be nice to everybody.
I'm from a culture where it's called manaki. Care is actually a principle, so helping strangers in need is actually a principle of how we're raised. So there are lots of examples where I've been taken care of, or we've stopped to help a family in need. Car's broken down, it's late at night, taking the kids out, taking them to a home, getting them dressed and sent on their way, or getting money for a bus, and those things are just basic principles of living in a community.
I did see someone's earring fall out in the street, and it looked like quite a sort of precious thing, so I had to run quite a long way after them when I had a sore knee, and to reunite them with this earring. But I think she was quite grateful. I think it was something quite precious to her.
I have helped people. Again, it was linked to my job. I was leaving work one lunchtime, and at the time I was working on a busy retail park, and there was a lady in front of me that didn't look very well. And as I approached her, I asked her if she was okay, and she said no, she was feeling very, very strange. And it soon escalated quite quickly, and she actually collapsed on the floor, which was a bit of a worry, and it did scare me a bit. But luckily I was still close to work, so I could go and get help, and we ended up having to phone an ambulance for the lady. We found out afterwards that she was actually having an anaphylactic shock to some medication that she just bought. So that always stuck with me, that if I hadn't have approached her and asked if she was okay, she could have been quite ill.
Most of the time that I've helped strangers, it's just been something simple like giving them directions or recommending a coffee shop nearby or something like that. But it makes me feel good, especially when I'm in my hometown. I feel like I have, roots there, so I'm better apt to help people around. It makes me feel pretty special.
Well, when I worked in London, and I always was helping people with directions of where to go, and if they were lost, just give them the benefit of my knowledge. And I'd like to think that being kind to people and giving them that knowledge, that I would receive the same whenever I went somewhere different and I was a stranger.
I help strangers a lot. I actually participate in a international hosting sort of network called Couchsurfing. So people from all over the world come and stay with me, and I in turn get to stay with them for free. So I've been doing it for about 4 years. I've met people from all walks of life and all different places in the world. And that is literally opening your home to strangers, not just helping someone on the street. So it just depends on what kind of person you are and how open you are to new experiences and meeting new people and just living in general.
Abby Elphinstone is a successful author of children's books.
The first set of books I ever wrote was a trilogy. The Dream Snatcher came first, the sequel was The Shadow Keeper, and then the finale was The Night Spinner. After that, I wanted a change of format. I wanted to write a standalone book. So Sky Song exists as a story completely as a whole by itself. Now, though, I'm writing a brand new series called The Unmapped Chronicles, and that I think might be 5 books, which I think might be called a quintet, but I don't know. We'll see. I've written 2, and I hope to write 3 more. I write adventure books with a little bit of magic. So I straddle 2 genres, adventure and fantasy. My books are quite scary in parts, so readers as young as 7 sometimes read the books but get a little bit scared. So I write a different story with every book, obviously. The plot is different, but the themes, the messages of every single book I write are the same. I believe that values of courage, kindness, hope and friendship are the cornerstones of what it means to be human. And we live in a world that is often politically, socially, morally very turbulent, very difficult to understand. And so I think now more than ever it is important to return to this idea of being tolerant, being kind.
Abby hasn't always been an author, and her journey to getting her work published wasn't always easy.
I began working life as a teacher in a secondary school, and I taught for 5 years, English again, and I tried to write books at the same time as teaching, but if anyone has been a teacher, they'll know that there is a lot of marking. It's a very tiring job. So the time I gave myself to write was a tiny bit, 2 hours, 1 hour every night after I'd finished marking. So eventually, on my 4th book, my 97th try with a literary agent, I got an email saying, yes, we love this and we would like to represent you. So it took a long time, but I think inside every person, or maybe it's just some people who face ongoing rejection, there grows a quiet grit, a determination to succeed no matter what. So I just kept holding on to the positive comments and tried to rework them into a book that was going to be perhaps marketable, successful, enjoyable for readers.
Abby's books are full of adventurous characters living in wild places. So where does she get the inspiration for her stories?
I start every story I write by trying to come up with an idea that nobody else has stumbled across yet. And sometimes I find these ideas walking down the street or strolling in the park, never really at my desk because that's too pressurized to think of an idea, but it happens more organically if I'm walking and daydreaming. Once I've come up with an idea that I believe in, that takes a long time, I then usually go on an adventure to a far-flung place, because I write about wild settings, to cement the setting, to really grow the fictional world I want to write about. So I've been out to the Arctic to research this book called Sky Song, which is set in a snowy kingdom called Erkenwald. And I went dog sledding, I watched the Northern Lights, the closest thing I've ever seen to watching magic unfurl in our world. And I saw hundreds of orcas, killer whales, feeding on tiny fish called herring under the sea. So those adventures formed the basis of this book. I also like writing about tribes, people who live in the furthest corners of our world that often maybe have a story to tell, but because of where they live, the story isn't told. So for the heroine of Sky Song, a girl called Eska, I went out to Mongolia to live with the Kazakh eagle hunters. I'd seen a photograph by an Israeli photographer, Asher Svidensky, of a girl called Aishelpan. And she was 12 years old when the photo was taken, and she is the only eagle huntress in a tribe full of men and boys. And I thought that was cool, the only girl. So I knew I wanted to meet her to write this book.
Abby wrote part of Sky Song while she was in hospital.
I spent 4 months in hospital, a third of a year. And during the course of that time, the midwives and the doctors and my friends who came to visit me were so unfailingly kind. And I wanted to write a book, Sky Song, that celebrated this theme of kindness.
Abby has an unusual way of planning her stories.
So I'm dyslexic, and when I started writing, I was very scared that that would be a problem and that I wouldn't be able to be a successful writer because my ideas often are a bit confused and tangled. But what I've realised is that dyslexic people think hugely creatively and they notice things other people miss. So I've learnt that if I draw the world I want to write about as a map, so maybe I put a forest here, a mountain here, a sea, a river, a lake, then I might have my characters travelling from place to place, and at every place they encounter an obstacle. Maybe they're betrayed in one place, they're robbed in another, they discover something they weren't meant to see at the river. And then slowly but surely my plot starts to take shape. So I used to think doodling was wrong. My teachers used to say, stop doodling, start concentrating. But I think drawing your way into a story, especially if you're dyslexic, can be a very, very useful tool.
Today, Abby spends a lot of time visiting schools and talking to the thousands of children who love her books and are inspired by her stories.
I want to talk to young children about this idea of being creative. I'm not an obvious sort of person for being an author. I have dyslexia, and yet I'm an author. I had 96 rejections before I became an author. So I want to tell children that the creative people are often the people who are brave enough to fail.